Episode 7 of The Flaming Jewel. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Flaming Jewel by Robert W. Chambers. Episode 7. Clinch's Dump. 1. When Mike Clinch bade Hal Smith return to the dump and take care of Eve, Smith already had decided to go there. Somewhere in Clinch's dump was hidden the Flaming Jewel. Now was his time to search for it. There were two other reasons why he should go back. One of them was that Leverett was loose. If anything had called Trooper Stormont away, Eve would be alone in the house, and nobody on earth could forecast what a coward like Leverett might attempt. But there was another and more serious reason for returning to Clinch's. Clinch, blood mad, was headed for Drowned Valley with his men to stop both ends of that vast morass before Quintana and his gang could get out. It was evident that neither Clinch nor any of his men, although their very lives depended upon familiarity with the wilderness, knew that a third exit from Drowned Valley existed. But the nephew of the late Henry Harrod knew. When Jake Clune was a young man and Darragh was a boy, Clune had shown him the rocky, submerged game trail into Drowned Valley. Doubtless Clune had used it in hooch running since. If ever he had told anybody else about it, probably he had revealed the trail to Quintana. And that was why Darragh, or Hal Smith, finally decided to return to Star Pond. Because if Quintana had been told or had discovered that circuitous way out of Drowned Valley, he might go straight to Clinch's dump. And, supposing Stormont was there, how could one state trooper stand off Quintana's gang? No sooner had Clinch and his motley followers disappeared into the dusk than Smith unslung his basket pack, fished out a big electric torch, flashed it tentatively, and then, reslinging the pack and taking his rifle in his left hand, he set off at an easy swinging stride. His course was not towards Star Pond. It was at right angles with that trail, for he was taking no chances. Quintana might already have left Drowned Valley by the third exit unknown to Clinch. Smith's course would now cut this unmarked trail, trodden only by game that left no sign in the shallow mountain rivulet which was the path. The trail lay a long way off through the night, but if Quintana had discovered and taken that trail, it would be longer still for him, twice as long as the regular trail out. For a mile or two, the forest was first-growth pine and sufficiently open so that Smith might economize on his torch. He knew every foot of it. As a boy he had carried a Jacob's staff in the Geological Survey. Who better than the forest-roaming nephew of Henry Harrod should know this blind wilderness? The great pines towered on every side, lofty and smooth to the feathery canopy that crowned them under the high stars. There was no game here, no water, nothing to attract anybody except the devastating lumberman. But this was a 5,000-acre patch of state land. The ugly whine of the steam saw would never be heard here. On he walked at an easy, swinging stride, flashing his torch rarely, feeling no concern about discovery by Quintana's people. It was only when he came into the hardwoods that the combined necessity for caution and the torch perplexed and worried him. Somewhere in here began an outcrop of rock running east for miles. Only stunted cedar and berry bushes found shallow nourishment on this ridge. When at last he found it, he travelled upon it, more slowly, constantly obliged to employ the torch. After an hour, perhaps, his feet splashed in shallow water. That was what he was expecting. The water was only an inch or two deep. It was ice cold and running north. Now he must advance with every caution, for here trickled the thin flow of the rocky rivulet that was the other entrance and exit, penetrating the immense horror of marsh and bog and depthless sink-holes known as Drowned Valley. For a long while he did not dare use his torch, but now he was obliged to. He shined the ground at his feet, elevated the torch with infinite precaution, throwing a fan-shaped light over the stretch of sink he had suspected and feared. It flanked the flat, wet path of rock on either side. Here death spread its slimy trap at his very feet. Then, as he stood taking his bearings with burning torch, far ahead in the darkness a light flashed, went out, flashed twice more, and was extinguished. Quintana. Smith's wits were working like lightning, but instinct guided him before his brain took command. He levelled his torch and repeated the 3 signal flashes. Then in darkness he came to swift conclusion. There were no other signals from the unknown. The stony bottom of the rivulet was his only aid. In his right hand the torch hung almost touching the water. At times he ventured sufficient pressure for a feeble glimmer, then again trusted to his sense of contact. For 300 yards, counting his strides, he continued on. Then, in total darkness, he pocketed the torch, slid a cartridge into the breech of his rifle, slung the weapon, pulled out a handkerchief and tied it across his face under the eyes. Now he drew the torch from his pocket, levelled it, sent 3 quick flashes out into the darkness. Instantly, close ahead, 3 blinding flashes broke out. For Hal Smith it had become a question of seconds. Death lay depthless on either hand. Ahead, death blocked the trail in silence. Out of the dark some unseen rifle might vomit death in his very face at any moment. He continued to move forward. After a while his ear caught a slight splash ahead. Suddenly a glare of light enveloped him. "Is it you, Harry Beck?" Instinct led again while wits worked madly. "Harry Beck is 2 miles back on guard. Where's Sard?" The silence became terrible. Once the glaring light in front moved, then became fixed. There was a light splashing. Instantly Smith realized that the man in front had set his torch in a tree crotch and was now cowering somewhere behind a levelled weapon. His voice came presently. "Hey, drop of that gun a damn quick." Smith bent leisurely and laid his rifle on a mossy rock. "Now, you there, why you want Sard, eh?" "I'll tell Sard, not you," retorted Smith coolly. "You listen to me, whoever you are. I'm from Sard's office in New York. I'm Abrams. The police are on their way to find Quintana." "How I know, eh? Why shall I believe that? You tell me quick, or I blow your damn head off." "Quintana will blow your head off unless you take me to Sard," drawled Smith. A movement might have meant death. He calmly rummaged for a cigarette, lighted it, blew a cloud insolently toward the white glare ahead, then he took another chance. "I guess you're Nick Salazar, aren't you?" "Si, I am Salazar. Who the devil are you?" "I'm Eddie Abrams, Sard's lawyer. My business is to find my client. If you stop me, you'll go to prison. The whole gang of you. Sard, Quintana, Piquet, Sanchez, Georgiades, and Harry Beck. And you." After a silence, "Maybe you'll go to the chair, too." It was the third chance he took. There was a dreadful stillness in the woods. Finally came a slight series of splashes, the crunch of heavy boots on rock. "For why you come here, eh?" demanded Salazar, a less aggressive manner. "What the matter, eh?" "Well," said Smith, "if you've got to know, there are people from Estonia and New York, if you understand that." "Christi! When did they arrive?" "A week ago. Sard's place is in the hands of the police. I couldn't stop them. They've got his safe and all of his papers. City, state, and federal officers are looking for him. The constable I rode into Ghost Lake yesterday. Now don't you think you'd better lead me to Sard?" "Christi!" exclaimed Salazar. "Sard, he is a mile ahead with the others. Damn! Damn! Me? How should I know what is to be done? Me? I have my orders from Quintana. What I do, eh? Christi! What to do? What you say I should do, Abrams?" A new fear had succeeded the old one, this was evident, and Salazar came forward into the light of his own fixed torch. A well-knit figure in slouch hat, grey shirt, and grey breeches, wearing a red bandana over the lower part of his face. He carried a heavy rifle. He came on, sturdily, splashing through the water, and walked up to Smith, his rifle resting on his right shoulder. "For me," he said excitedly. "Long time I have worry in this a damn wood. See, where you say those carabinieri are?" "At Ghost Lake. Your signature is in the hotel ledger." "Christi! You know where Clinch is." "You know, too, he's on his way to Drowned Valley." "Damn! I knew it! Quintana also. You know where is Quintana and Sard? I tell you. They marched very fast over the dump of Clinch, see? And there they would discover this a big diamond, this flaming jewel. See? Now you tell me what I do." Smith said slowly, "If Quintana is marching on Clinch's, he's marching into a trap." Salazar blanched above his bandana. "The state troopers are there," said Smith. "They'll get him for sure." "Christi!" faltered Salazar. "Then they are gobbled. Quintana, Sard, everybody. See?" Smith considered the man. "You can save your skin anyway. You can go back and tell Harry Beck. Then both of you can beat it for Drowned Valley." He picked up his rifle, stood a moment in troubled reflection. "If I could overtake Quintana, I'd do it," he said. "I think I'll try. If I can't, he's done for. You tell Harry Beck that Eddie Abrams advises him to beat it for Drowned Valley." Suddenly Salazar tore the bandana from his face, flung it down, and stamped on it. "What I tell Quintana?" he yelled, his features distorted with rage. I don't like it. No, not me. No. I tell him, stay at Costa Rica and watch this fella Clinch. See, not for me these would. No, I spit upon it. I curse it like hell. I tell Quintana I don't like it. Now it is trouble that comes and we lose out. Damn, damn. Me, I find me Beck. You shall say to Jose Quintana how he is a damn fool. Me, I am finished. Me, Nick Salazar, you hear me, Abrams. I am through. I go. He glared at Smith, started to move, came back and took his torch, made a violent gesture with it which drenched the woods with goblin light. You stop a Quintana maybe. You tell him he is a big fool. You tell him Nick Salazar no damn fool. No. Adios, my friend Abrams. I beat it. I saved my skin. Once more Salazar turned and headed for Drowned Valley, where Clinch would not fail to kill him. The man was going to his death, and it was Smith who sent him. Suddenly it came to Smith that he could not do this thing, that this man had no chance, that he was slaying a human being with perfect safety to himself and without giving him a chance. Salazar, he called sharply. The man halted and looked around. Come back. Salazar hesitated, turned finally, and slouched toward him. Smith laid his pack and rifle, and as Salazar came up, he quietly took his weapon from him and laid it beside his own. "What is the matter?" demanded Salazar, astonished. "Why you take my gun?" Smith measured him. They were well matched. "Set your torch in a crotch," he said. Salazar, puzzled and impatient, demanded to know why. Smith took both torches, set them opposite each other, and drew Salazar into the white glare. "Now," he said, "you dirty desperado, I'm going to try to kill you clean. Look out for yourself." For a second Salazar stood rooted in blank astonishment. "I'm one of Clinch's men," said Smith, "but I can't stick a knife in your back at that. Now take care of yourself if you can." His voice died in his throat. Salazar was on him, clawing, biting, kicking, striving to strangle him, to wrestle him off his feet. Smith reeled, staggered under the sheer rush of the man, almost blinded by blows, clutched, bewildered in Salazar's panther grip. For a moment he writhed there, searching blindly for his enemy's wrist, striving to avoid the teeth that snapped at his throat, stifled by the hot stench of the man's breath in his face. "I kill you! I kill you! Damn! Damn!" panted Salazar in convulsive fury as Smith freed his left arm and struck him in the face. Now on the narrow, wet, slippery strip of rock they swayed to and fro, murderously interlocked, their heavy boots splashing, battling with limb and body. Twice Salazar forced Smith outward over the sink, trying to end it, but could not free himself. Once, too, he managed to get at a hidden knife, drag it out, and stab at head and throat, but Smith caught the fist that wielded it and forced back the arm, held it while Salazar screamed at him, lunging at his face with bared teeth. Suddenly the end came. Salazar's body was heaved upward, sprawling for an instant in the dazzling glare, hurtled over Smith's head, and fell into the sink with a crashing splash. Frantically he thrashed there, spattering and floundering in darkness. He made no outcry. Probably he had landed head first. In a moment only a vague heaving came from the unseen ooze. Smith, exhausted, drenched with sweat, leaned against the tamarack, sickened. After all sound had ceased, he straightened up with an effort. Presently he bent and recovered Salazar's red bandana and his hat, lifted his own rifle and pack, and struggled into the harness. Then, kicking Salazar's rifle overboard, he unfastened both torches, pocketed one, and started on in a flood of ghostly light. He was shaking all over, and the torch quivered in his hand. He had seen men die in the Great War. He had been near death himself, but never before had he been near death in so horrible a form. The sodden noise in the mud, the deadened flopping of the sinking body, mud-plastered hands beating frantically on mud, splattering, agonizing in darkness. My God, he breathed, anything but that. Anything but that. 2. Before midnight he struck the hard forest. Here there was no trail at all, only spreading outcrop of rock under dying leaves. He could see a few stars. Cautiously he ventured to shine his compass close to the ground. He was still headed right. The ghastly Sink country lay behind him. Ahead of him, somewhere in darkness, but how far he did not know, Quintana and his people were moving swiftly on Clinch's dump. It may have been an hour later, 2 hours perhaps, when from far ahead in the forest came a sound, the faint clink of a shod heel on rock. Now Smith unslung his pack, placed it between two rocks where laurel grew. Salazar's red bandana was still wet, but he tied it across his face, leaving his eyes exposed. The dead man's hat fitted him. His own hat and the extra torch he dropped into his basket pack. Ready now, he moved swiftly forward, trailing his rifle, and very soon it became plain to him that people ahead were moving without much caution, evidently fearing no unfriendly ear or eye in the section of that wilderness. Smith could hear their tread on the rock and root and rotten branch, or swishing through frosted fern and brake, or louder on newly fallen leaves. At times he could even see the round white glare of a torch on the ground, see it shift ahead, lighting up tree trunks, spreading out fan-like into a wide misty glory, then vanish as darkness rushed in from the vast ocean of the night. Once they halted at a brook. Their torches flashed it. He heard them sounding its depths with their gun butts. Smith knew that brook. It was the east branch of Star Brook, the inlet to Star Pond. Far ahead, above the trees, the sky seemed luminous. It was star-luster over the pond, turning the mist into silvery splendor. Now the people ahead of him moved with more caution, crossing the brook without splashing, and their boots made less noise in the woods. To keep in touch with them, Smith hastened his pace until he drew near enough to hear the low murmur of their voices. They were travelling in single file. He had a glimpse of them against the ghostly radiance ahead. Indeed, so near he had approached that he could hear the heavy, laboured breathing of the last man in the file. Some laggard who dragged his feet, plodding on doggedly, panting, muttering. Probably the man was Sard. Already the forest in front was invaded by the misty radiance of the clearing. Through the trees starlight glimmered on the water. The perfume of the open land grew in the night air. The scent of dew-wet grass, the smell of still water and of sedgy shores. Lying flat behind a rotting log, Smith could see them all, spectral shapes against the light. There were 5 of them at the forest's edge. They seemed to know what was to be done and how to do it. 2 went down among the ferns and stunted willows toward the west shore of the pond. 2 sheered off to the southwest, shoulder-deep in blackberry and sumac. The 5th man waited for a while, then ran down across the open pasture. Scarcely had he started when Smith glided to the wood's edge, crouched, and looked down. Below stood Clinch's dump, plain in the starlight, every window dark. To the west the barn loomed, huge, with its ramshackle outbuildings straggling toward the lake. Straight down the slope toward the barn ran the 5th man of Quintana's gang and disappeared among the outbuildings. Smith crept after him through the sumacs and, at the foot of the slope, squatted low in a clump of ragweed. So close to the house was he now that he could hear the dew rattling on the veranda roof. He saw shadowy figures appear, one after another, and take stations at the 4 corners of the house. The 5th man was somewhere near the outbuildings, very silent about whatever he had on hand. The stillness was absolute, save for the drumming dew and faint ripple from the water's edge. Smith crouched, listened, searched for the starlight with intense eyes, and waited, until something happened. He could not solve the problem before him. He could be of no use to Eve Strayer and to Stormont until he found out what Quintana was doing. He could be of little use anyway, unless he got into the house, where 2 rifles might hold out against 5. There was no use in trying to get to Ghost Lake for assistance. He felt that whatever was about to happen would come with a rush. It would be all over before he had gone 5 minutes. No, the only thing to do was to stay where he was. As for his pledge to the little Grand Duchess, that was always in his mind. Sooner or later, somehow, he was going to make good his pledge. He knew that Quintana and his gang were here to find the Flaming Jewel. Had he not encountered Quintana, his own errand had been the same, for Smith had started for Clinch's, prepared to reveal himself to Stormont, and then, masked to the eyes, and save Eve from a broken heart, and Clinch from state prison, he had meant to rob the girl at pistol point. It was the only way to save Clinch, the only way to save the pride of this blindly loyal girl, for the arrest of Clinch meant ruin to both, and Smith realized it thoroughly. A slight sound from one of the outhouses, a sort of wagon shed, attracted his attention. Through the frost-blighted ragweed he peered intently, listening. After a few moments a faint glow appeared in the shed. There was a crackling noise. The glow grew pinker. 3. Inside Clinch's house Eve awoke with a start. Her ears were filled with a strange rushing, crackling noise. A rosy glare danced and shook outside her windows. As she sprang to the floor on bandaged feet, a shrill scream burst out in the ruddy darkness. Unearthly, horrible, and there came a thunderous battering from the barn. The girl tore open her bedroom door. "Jack!" she cried in a terrified voice. "The barn's on fire!" "Good God!" he said. "My horse!" He had already sprung from his chair outside her door. Now he ran downstairs, and she heard bolt and chain clash in the kitchen and his spur boot land on the porch. "Oh!" she whimpered, snatching a blanket wrapper from a peg and struggling into it. "Oh, the poor horse! Jack! Jack! I'm coming to help! Don't risk your life! I'm coming! I'm coming!" Terror clutched her as she stumbled downstairs on bandaged feet. As she reached the door, a great flare of light almost blinded her. "Jack!" and at the same instant she saw him struggling with 3 masked men in the glare of the wagon shed afire. His rifle stood in the corridor outside her door. With one bound she was on the stairs again. There came the crash and splinter of wood and glass from the kitchen. A man with a handkerchief over his face caught her on the landing. Twice she wrenched herself loose, and her fingers almost touched Stormont's rifle. She fought like a cornered lynx, tore the handkerchief from her assailant's face, recognized Quintana, hurled her very body at him, eyes flaming, small teeth bared. 2 other men laid hold. In another moment she had tripped Quintana, and all 4 fell, rolling over and over down the short flight of stairs, landing in the kitchen, still fighting. Here in the darkness she wriggled out, somehow leaving her blanket wrapping in their clutches. In another instant she was up the stairs again, only to discover the rifle was gone. The red glare from the wagon house lighted her bedroom, and she sprang inside and bolted the door. Her chamois jacket with its loops full of cartridge hung on a peg. She got it, seized her rifle, ran to the window just as 2 masked men, pushing Stormont before them, entered the house by the kitchenway. Her own door was resounding with kicks and blows, shaking, shivering under the furious impact of boot and rifle butt. She ran to the bed, thrust her hand under the pillow, pulled out the case containing the flaming jewel, and placed it in the breast pocket of her shooting jacket. Again she crept to the window. Only the wagon house was burning. Somebody, however, had led Stormont's horse from the barn and had tied it to a tree at a safe distance. It stood there, trembling, its beautiful, nervous head turned toward the burning building. The blows upon her bedroom door had ceased. There came a loud trampling and a sound of excited voices. Quintana's sarcastic tones, clear, dominant. "Dios, the police! Why you bring me this gendarme? What am I to do with a gentleman of the constabulary, eh? Do you think I am fool enough to cut his throat? Well, Señor Gendarme, what are you doing here in the dump of Clinch?" Then Stormont's voice, clear and quiet. "What are you doing here? If you've a quarrel with Clinch, he's not here. There's only a young girl in the house." "So," said Quintana. "Well, that's what I expect, my friend. It's this lady upon whom I do myself the honour to call." Eve listened, heard Stormont's rejoinder, still, calm, and very grave. "The man who lays a finger on that young girl had better be dead. He's as good as dead the moment he touches her. There won't be a chance for him. Not for any of you if you harm her." "Calm yourself, my friend," said Quintana. "I demand of this lady only she return to me the property of which have been robbed by Monsieur Clinch. I knew nothing of any theft, nor does she." "Pardon, Señor. Clinch knows, and I know." His tone changed offensively. "Señor Gendarme, am I permitted to understand that you are a friend of this young lady? A hard friend, perhaps?" "I am her friend," said Stormont bluntly. "Ah," said Quintana, "then you shall persuade her to return to me this packet of which Monsieur Clinch has robbed me." There was a short silence, then Quintana's voice again. "I know this packet is still concealed in this house. Peaceably, if possible, I would recover my property. If she refuse—" Another pause. "Well?" inquired Stormont coolly. "Ah, it is very painful to say. Alas, Señor Gendarme, I must have my property. If she refuse, then I must sever one of her pretty fingers. And if she still refuse, I must sever her pretty fingers one by one until—" "You know what happened to you," interrupted Stormont in a voice that quivered in spite of himself. "I take my chance. Señor Gendarme, she is within that room. If you are her friend, you shall advise her to return to me my property." After another silence, "Eve," he called sharply. She placed her lips to the door. "Yes, Jack?" He said, "There are 5 masked men out here who say that Clinch robbed them, and they are here to recover their property. Do you know anything about this?" "I know they lie. My father is not a thief. I have my rifle and plenty of ammunition. I shall kill every man who enters this room." For a moment nobody stirred or spoke. Then Quintana strode to the bolted door and struck it with the butt of his rifle. "You in there," he said in a menacing voice. "You listen once to me. You open your door and come out. I give you 1 minute." He struck the door again. 1 minute, señorita, or I cut from your friend here the hand from his right arm." There was a deathly silence. Then the sound of bolts. The door opened. Slowly the girl limped forward, still wearing the hunting jacket over her nightdress. Quintana made her an elaborate and ironical bow, slouch hat in hand, and another masked man took a rifle. "Señorita," said Quintana with another sweep of his hat, "I ask pardon that I trouble you for my packet of which your father has robbed me for a very long time." Slowly the girl lifted her blue eyes to Stormont. He was standing between 2 masked men, their pistols pressed slightly against his stomach. Stormont reddened painfully. "It was not for myself that I let you open the door," he said. "They would not have ventured to lay hands on me." "Ah," said Quintana with a terrifying smile, "you would not have been the first gendarme who had accorded me his hand." Two of the masked men laughed loudly. Outside in the ragweed patch, Smith rose, stole across the grass to the kitchen door and slipped inside. "Now, Señorita," said Quintana gaily, "my packet, if you please. And we leave you to the caress of your faithful gendarme, who should thank God that he still possesses two good hands to fondle you. Allons, come then, my packet." One of the masked men said, "Take her downstairs and lock her up somewhere or she'll shoot us from her window." "Lead out that gendarme, too," added Quintana, grasping Eve by the arm. Down the stairs tramped the men, forcing their prisoners with them. In the big kitchen the glare from the burning outhouse fell dimly. The place was full of shadows. "Now," said Quintana, "I take my property and my leave. Where is the packet hidden?" She stood for a moment with drooping head, amid the sombre shadows. Then suddenly she drew the emblazoned morocco case from her breast pocket. What followed occurred in the twinkling of an eye, for as Quintana extended his arm to grasp the case, a hand snatched it. A masked figure sprang away through the door and ran toward the barn. Somebody recognized the hat and red bandana. "Salzar!" he yelled. "Nick Salzar!" "A traitor, by God!" shouted Quintana. Even before he had reached the door his pistol flashed twice, deafening all the semi-darkness, choking them with stifling fumes. A masked man turned on Stormont, forcing him back into the pantry at pistol point. Another man pushed Eve after him, slamming the pantry door and bolting it. Through the iron bars of the pantry window Stormont saw a man, wearing a red bandana tied under his eyes, run up, untie his horse, and fling himself astride under a shower of bullets. As he wheeled the horse and swung him into the clearing toward the foot of Star Pond, his seat and horsemanship were not to be mistaken. He was gone now, the gallop stretching into a dead run, and Quintana's men still following, shooting and hallooing in the starlight like a pack of leaping shapes from hell. But Quintana had not followed far. When he had emptied his automatic he halted. Something about the transaction suddenly checked his fury, stilled it, summoned his brain into action. For a full minute he stood unstirring, every atom of intelligence in terrible concentration. Presently he put his left hand into his pocket, fitted another clip to his pistol, turned on his heel and walked straight back to the house. Between the two locked in the pantry not a word had passed. Stormont still peered out between the iron bars, striving to catch a glimpse of what was going on. Eve crouched at the pantry doors, her face in her hands, listening. Suddenly she heard Quintana step in the kitchen. Cautiously she turned the pantry key from inside. Stormont heard her and instantly came to her. At the same moment Quintana unbolted the door from the outside and tried to open it. "Come out," he said coldly, "or it will not go well with you when my men return." "You've got what you say was your property," replied Stormont. "What do you want now?" "I tell you what I want ver damn quick. Who was he, this man who ride off with my property on your horse, eh? Because it was not Nick Salzar. No, Salzar cannot ride this way. No. Alors?" "I can't tell you who he was," replied Stormont. "That's your affair, not ours." "No, ah? Very well, then, I shall tell you, Señor Flick. He was one of yours. I understand. It's a trap, a cheat, what you call a plant. This man who rode your horse, he is disguised. Yes, he also a gendarme. Yes. You think I let a gendarme rob me? I got you where I want you now. You shall write your gendarme friend that he return my property. 1 day's time, or I send him by parcel 2 nice, fresh-out right hands, your sweetheart's and your own." Stormont drew Eve's head close to his. "This man is blood mad or out of his mind. I'd better go out and take a chance at him before the others come back." But the girl shook her head violently, caught him by the arm, and drew him toward the mouth of the tile down which Clinch always emptied his hooch when the dump was raided. But now it appeared that the tile which protruded from the cement floor was removable. In silence she began to unscrew it, and he, seeing what she was trying to do, helped her. Together they lifted the heavy tile and laid it on the floor. "Open this door!" shouted Quintana in a paroxysm of fury. "I give you 1 minute. Then, by God, I kill you both." Eve lifted a screen of wood through which the tile had been set. Under it a black hole yawned. It was a tunnel made of 3-foot aqueduct tiles, and it led straight into Star Pond 200 feet away. Now, as she straightened up and looked silently at Stormont, they heard the trample of boots in the kitchen, voices, the bang of gun stocks. "Does that drain lead into the lake?" whispered Stormont. She nodded. "Will you follow me, Eve?" She pushed him aside, indicating that he was to follow her. As she stripped the hunting jacket from her, a hot colour swept her face. As she dropped on both knees, crept straight into the tile, and slipped out of sight. As she disappeared, Quintana shouted something in Portuguese and fired at the lock. With the smash of splintering wood in his ear, Stormont slid into the smooth tunnel. In an instant he was shooting down a polished toboggan slide. In another moment he was under the icy water of Star Pond. Shocked, blinded, fighting his way to the surface, he felt his spurred boots dragging him like a ton of iron. Then to him came her helping hand. "I can make it," he gasped. But his clothing and his boots and the icy water began to tell on him in mid-lake. Swimming without effort beside him, watching his every stroke, presently she sank a little and glided under him and a little ahead, so that his hands fell upon her shoulders. He let them rest, so aware now that it was no burden to such a swimmer. Supple and silent as a swimming otter, the girl slipped lithely through the chilled water, which washed his body to the nostrils and numbed his legs till he could scarcely move them. Now, of a sudden, his feet touched gravel. He stumbled forward in the shadow of overhanging trees and saw her wading shoreward, a dripping, silvery shape on the shoal. Then, as he staggered to her, breathless, where she was standing on the pebbled shore, he saw her join both hands, cup-shaped, and lift them to her lips. And out of her mouth poured diamond, sapphire, and emerald in a dazzling stream, among them one great flashing gem blazing in the starlight, the flaming jewel. Like a naiad of the lake she stood, white, slim, silent, the heaped gem glittering in her snowy hands, her face framed by the curling masses of her wet hair. Then slowly she turned her head to Stormont. "These are what Quintana came for," she said. "Could you put them in your pocket?" End of Episode 7.